we thought we were going to hit like £1 million by year 3.
A month?
No, total.
Total, a year?
Yeah.
And you now do 1.4 a month?
Yeah. When I look at him, I kind of feel that his career in a way had failed. So I was terrified of that. I mean, it was just wake up, grind, take 5 minutes for lunch. I never left the house.
So Peter was no longer involved?
No, we had to have a very awkward call with his head of investments. Sometimes a little bit of passive aggression. And I said, you have to cut that bullshit. The reason it stopped feeling fun was because we were so burnt out. That was the most overwhelmed I had ever felt in my life. Because I knew that our lives were going to change.
Marisa, how are you?
I am very well today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How's life?
Life is busy, as always.
Well, we're going to talk about a lot today, particularly with what you're doing in the world of Perfect TED. But before we get into that, how have the last 12 months been for you?
A whirlwind. Where do I even start? Let's see. I got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was very exciting. I am now part of a team of almost 22 people.
Wow.
And I think we were definitely less than 10 a year ago. And then 2 years ago, it was only 2. So it's grown quite quickly.
Yeah, that sounds like a busy start to 12 months.
Yeah.
But before we talk a lot about Perfect TED and that world, I want to go back a little bit to give some context behind you. And I know you've done a lot of podcasts and the growth of Perfect TED has been super public. So I want to try and find out a little bit more that others don't know. What was early life like for you? How did you grow up?
I love this question. It's interesting when I think back to my childhood. I am an only child, and I definitely I feel very privileged. I grew up in a privileged environment. I'm from New York City, but I think from a young age, I was exposed to certain challenges that younger children and even young adults aren't necessarily exposed to. So my mom, for almost her entire life, has had pretty severe bipolar disorder.
Oh, wow.
And that always kind of manifested itself in rather strange ways whilst I was growing up. She had a very tumultuous relationship with my father. My father also was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder.
Okay.
And they separated when I was 13. I have very happy memories from before then, but after that period of time, things just became very chaotic. And I think there was a bit of a role reversal where my dad had left the house. My mom was kind of self-combusting and displaying kind of schizophrenic tendencies of speaking to stuffed animals and other strange behaviors. And I kind of became the parent, if that makes sense.
Did you have other family members around you, or was it just the two of you?
Thankfully, my grandparents were and continue to be really involved in my life. But it was just the two of us in the house, which was definitely, again, chaotic. Obviously, for a lot of the reasons that she was a cool mom back then, I now reflect and think maybe not the best parenting.
Yeah.
Because there were very few rules, just no oversight, really. So I craved structure and I ensured to implement it for myself. So I was the one who had always had to keep on top of schoolwork. I tried creating an exercise routine. I even sought my own therapist. So I really, again, I feel I had to mature maybe faster than my peer group did, but I actually think it was one of the best things to happen to me because I firmly believe that adversity does make you stronger. I know it's cliche, but I feel I am almost living proof of that. And I think that experience also made me very goal oriented because I was always striving to kind of get out of that house.
Yeah. Is that also driven by a little bit of fear of maybe life not working out?
Oh, absolutely. My parents. And again, I feel I have such compassion and kindness towards my mother, because I know that her limitations are not her fault, if that makes sense. And I understand that some things are beyond her own control. But when it comes to my father, there were certain tendencies he had where he just did not have a very strong work ethic, and he was quite entitled. And when I look at him, I kind of feel that his career in a way had failed. So I was terrified of that. I saw that, and I did not want that. I wanted the exact opposite, which was why I always tried to perform well in school, which is why I wanted to go to an Ivy League college and then get a blue chip job in private equity after graduating.
Because you went to university to study finance. That was always the goal for you? And was that because that's what success looked like for you in your head?
Definitely. My grandfather is such a distinct opposite to my father, because he is a self-made, such a hardworking businessman. To this day, he is...
Is this your father's father?
My mother's father. So his name is Jesse, but I call him Papa.
Love it.
And he is like a father figure to me.
Yeah.
And he will be 85 in January. And to this day, he still works.
Amazing.
So he had always kind of showed me that understanding or having a better knowledge of finance and a strong business acumen would just help me get far into the world.
Yeah.
So I trusted his advice.
Amazing. And going to university, now you talk a lot about things like ADHD and some of the sort of learning struggles you've had, and I'm also in the same boat there. But did you discover that as you went to university? Did you start to feel some of those struggles? And tell me a little bit about that.
I discovered it during high school, actually.
Right.
So because things at home became rather chaotic around the age of 13, that is when I started to see a therapist. And I actually would meet with her weekly. And as someone who has a stronger predisposition to developing kind of mental health issues due to a family history, I think it was the best thing that I could have ever done.
Yeah.
And she really had such an intimate knowledge of just my being, my neuroses, my tendencies, whatever it was. And she'd see report cards and hear feedback from my teachers and my grandparents. And after maybe it was like 3 years of working with her, so I was about 16, I was really struggling. I felt driven, but I also at the same time really lacked motivation.
Yeah.
In a way, and I was really struggling to focus in school. I was, the classic chatty girl in the back of the classroom, causing a commotion, and my grades started to suffer a bit. But it was more due to my inability to just sit down and be still. Yeah. Really, I was just all over the place, and I felt very overwhelming feelings of just chaos in my mind, my inability to really string sentences together. And she did a bunch of tests, and I basically had a diagnosis of ADHD. So
what changed for you once you had the diagnosis?
Well, I tried to go on medication, actually.
How was that? I've done the same thing.
Yeah. It is, it's interesting because I believe firmly in the power of medication. Okay. Because I have seen my mother on and off of medication, and I know that is for a completely different condition, but she is radically better when she is on medication.
That's bipolar medication.
Right. Correct. It is life-changing for her.
Sure.
But for ADHD, the side effects are really severe. So I felt like a shell of myself. I felt way more focused. And, I remember feeling shame around it a little bit because I almost felt like it was this unfair advantage I had. But the way that my therapist had described it, which I had never thought of, was it was like wearing glasses. Like if you're someone that has astigmatism and you can't see the school board, you got to wear glasses.
Sure.
So she framed it in that way, and it did help. You know, my grades improved. I definitely had more motivation. I was able to actually follow through on things. My impulse control was much better. That was another symptom. I would just say things I didn't mean or, you know, do things to an excess, and it helped. But I just, you know, I really didn't like how it made me feel.
How long did you medicate for?
For a while, years, yeah.
I did a week and then I bailed out.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that's better.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago for me. I was sort of 15 at the time, so about 13, 14 years ago. But yeah, I think it was literally like 4 days, and I just had the worst. The shell of yourself, I think, is a very good way to put it. And yeah, it's always something I've been interested in, but I'm not a huge. I mean, I don't even take like Nurofen if I've got a headache. I'm just not really that interested in medication. Not because I'm like there's a chip in it, but I'm just more kind of like, do you know what I mean? I'm just a bit more like, I would like to just sort of continue living life as I am and sort of deal with that.
It's not sustainable.
You mentioned a little bit about kind of like putting labels on things and that sort of variable. For you going through the education system, did you feel that there was a lot of labels with the ADHD piece and with being distracted and the bad grades and all that kind of stuff? Did you struggle with that at all, or did that feel kind of like gave you a bit more of an understanding of who you are?
I just felt a better understanding of how my brain worked, and I was able to create coping mechanisms that worked for me. So for instance, I love, I started to implement this strategy called human Adderall, which literally is just someone, it's like body doubling. It's someone kind of just with you doing whatever the task is that you're doing. That's why I love working in an office around other people. Maybe that's also partially why I hate being alone, but that's another side point. And I love just being in it with a group. And I think understanding that about myself was really helpful, and it made a lot of sense to me. So I didn't necessarily struggle with the label. In fact, I actually just felt it gave me clarity and more power over my situation, because I always think that information is power.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, because I feel labels are more comforting for me. So I was like, cool, I've got this thing. Doesn't mean I'm anyone different, but that's interesting. And now I've got comfort understanding I'm going to go do my thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
University for you, obviously you achieved the goal of getting there and doing that process, and you met your now co-founder on the first day of uni or the first week or something like that?
I met him on the first day and he hated me.
That's a story. Why did he hate you?
It's so funny because our grade was maybe 2,000 people. And on the first day of school, you're split up into advising groups of about 15 people. So there are so many, as you can imagine.
2,000 per year, effectively.
2,000 per year.
Sorry, yeah, got you.
So put into this group of 15, and Teddy, my co-founder, and now my brother-in-law, but we can get into that, was in my group. And I was wearing, I don't know, maybe like a Lululemon athleisure outfit, right? And he was a D1 athlete playing soccer. Yes, I call it soccer. Sorry, not football. At our college. And he approached me and said, "Oh, do you play sports as well? I was just coming from the field."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, I just want people to think I'm sporty," as a joke, right? And he thought I was just obnoxious. And so I think he was like, "I'm staying as far away from that girl as possible." Great, done. But now he's stuck with me. So yeah.
There's a moment there. So university for you were studying finance.
I was studying real estate finance, yeah.
And that for you was where clear-minded on the goal, and that's where you wanted to get to.
Correct.
And after leaving university, were you still friends with Teddy at the time? Did that kind of come back round?
Yes. So I started to date his brother.
Knowing who his brother was?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yes. I knew who his brother was. Levi, my now husband, he was actually studying abroad in Singapore for 6 months during my first semester in college. Levi is 2 years older than Teddy and I, and met him on the first night of second semester, walked right up to him, and I said, "Do you want to go shotgun a beer?" Which is so American. It's painful. And I had never shotgunned a beer in my life before. And he said, "Okay." And I said, "You're Teddy's brother, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I can tell from the accent." And he said, "I've only said 2 words to you." And I was like, "Oh, this is going so well." So yeah, that was it. And then we started dating. Teddy and I got really close as a result. We're basically in the same friend group, and then became best friends. So it was like we were this fun family unit. And then we lived together for 4 years in London.
After you leaving university?
Yeah, when I moved here.
And in moving here to London, you got a role in finance.
So that started in New York, actually. So I had graduated from uni. I got a job in real estate private equity, which was my dream job. Absolutely loved it, but found the culture to be a bit difficult. I was the only woman in a team of all men. And it was just a much more aggressive kind of workplace than I had initially imagined.
Right.
But I loved how fast paced it was. I learned so much and I really felt like I was on the right trajectory. But then COVID hit and I was hunkering down with my grandparents because I was really worried about them and essentially just stuck in an apartment in New York City with like no fresh air for like a month. And then we realized we could open the window, like it wasn't that airborne. So was eventually there for about 6 months. And I feel like everyone had this moment during COVID where they could kind of reflect and just assess how their life was going really. And I was at this point doing long distance with Levi for 3 years. And I was just like, I don't really want to do that anymore. So I looked into programs at grad schools in London because that was one of the only ways that I could get a visa because my work wasn't willing to send me to the London office. And got into a grad program in London. That's when I moved over.
And what about your mum at this period of time? Where was she? Was she with your grandparents?
No, she was in a separate home. So after I graduated from high school, we had, she moved into a new home. I moved into a new home and we had to kind of separate because it wasn't the healthiest of situations for us.
Understood. So in that moment of reflection, what were you thinking about the current role?
I was just thinking, I'm working so damn hard. I was working 16-hour days, you know?
Yeah.
Even longer sometimes. Like, I mean, it was just wake up, grind, take 5 minutes for lunch. I never left the house. Like, it was just crazy.
Was the money piece a big driver for you at that point?
Oh, yeah. It was great. I mean, we were very nicely compensated, absolutely. Yeah. And I loved having financial freedom.
Yeah.
And I loved being able to actually earn money. I mean, that for me was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So getting a paycheck, sick. But I just realized if I could work this hard for someone else, I'd rather do it for something I'm passionate about and myself.
Yeah. For you, was there ever a fear, if I quit this, I can't go back?
Not really.
So you kind of had nothing to lose.
I really felt I had nothing to lose. And even I left it on such great terms with the company that they had even said, you know what, do this grad program. And if you decide at the end that you'd like to come back, of course, that's a conversation we're really happy to have. So I felt really good about it because they knew I was such a hard worker. I was doing a great job. I was, you know, helping close deals and yeah.
And never burn a bridge, I guess, is super important.
Exactly.
So you came to the UK to join this grad program.
I did.
And what was that?
It was innovation, management, and entrepreneurship at Imperial Business School. So it was very apropos, of course.
And during that time, where did you start to think, I want to build a brand now?
It's so funny because we actually, to this day, are like, how did it happen? Because it genuinely started out of pure need. Like It was a pure necessity that I had because I could only drink matcha. So starting back in college, for people who are unfamiliar with my story, I was only drinking coffee, only drinking Red Bull or Monster, whatever I could really grab my hands on, like glucose stimulant, just really unhealthy, highly caffeinated. And I was constantly just crashing. I was exhausted. I was drinking so much caffeine. It was just terrible.
Yeah.
And a friend one day, she found me like face down on my desk in the library and was like, Marissa, you got to stop doing this to yourself. Like, it's so bad. And she mentioned that she had traveled with, I think it was like either her friend or her family to Japan. And she had been introduced to a really caffeinated type of green tea called matcha, but it didn't give you the same sort of jittery, crash-induced experience that coffee or other types of caffeine would give you. So I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll give it a try. And this place like not even on our campus had it, I think in like not downtown Philly, but like center Philadelphia.
Right.
And I went and tried it and I actually really liked it. And I was like, I could get behind this. And I think they were, I don't even remember where I was getting it from, maybe like Amazon. But I was ordering single serve sticks and it was
in like the powder
format, and I was making it at home. And then I think slowly the cafes on campus started to stock it, and it was just what I drank. Like I never looked back, and I felt so much better. I felt way less anxious because I have anxiety. I really obviously run anxious, and I never felt like those heart palpitations anymore. I just felt very on, like my peak energy and focus. I don't know how else to describe it. It was just a very revolutionary change in my life. And when I got to the UK, couldn't find it anywhere. I was like, where the hell is all the matcha, So I remember we lived close to a Pret, and I think they had, not Pret. Yes, it was Pret. And they did have matcha. And I was like, this isn't matcha. This is bad matcha. So we just kind of started ordering it in bulk out of necessity, making it in massive vats at home. And we were like, okay, how do we just get to more people? How do we put it into an RTD format so that everyone can try it?
Because at this point, matcha had kind of been in the UK a little bit, but it made it maybe like in more powder formats, and it kind of had its craze and kind of died off a little bit. Because when is this period of time? Is this sort of 2018, 2019?
No, this was 2020.
2020.
But you're absolutely right in saying that, because we started to do some research into the existing matcha market in the UK.
Yeah.
And found that in about 2017, maybe even earlier, some brands started popping up trying to bring matcha or make it, more ubiquitous in the UK. And there were actually a few RTD matchas that failed, and they were in the format of matcha lattes. Now, we thought that they had failed because maybe the branding or the benefits weren't portrayed well. And actually, the one takeaway that we had was that there wasn't one consistent message as to why people should drink it.
Right.
It was all over the place. It was the antioxidants. It was the amino acids. It was
a load of information, basically.
Exactly. Right. And for me, I was like, it's so clear. It's the reason why I drink it. And that's for the energy, And so that is what we've really focused on. And we're like, we just have to make that abundantly clear. And then that's how you win.
Yeah. Obviously, you're saying we because you went back to Teddy and probably pitched them the idea. But why did you want to do it with someone else? And why did you want to grow the brand by yourself?
That's also a very great question, because I think I have enough self-awareness to know that there are just certain things that I'm great at, and others that I'm not as great at. I'm highly creative, but I also have the financial, business acumen side.
Qualifications as well.
Yeah, exactly. And but at the same time, I can be highly distractible. I can be a little bit chaotic and disorganized, even though I so crave structure. I don't know if you ever heard like this chaos theory of ADHD.
Tell me.
It's basically how it's so funny how you live in a perpetual state of chaos, and as a result you so badly crave control and the ability to create structure around you. And at times you're successful. You can do that because like by sheer willpower, you make it happen. But then inevitably you fall back into the same chaos.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Theory. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems obvious and pretty intuitive. But yeah, I just knew, to be someone who's neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, operating in a neurotypical business field, I think personally I needed someone who was neurotypical to help kind of balance me out.
Yeah. I guess Teddy's that option originally. But what do you think for you at the time, you're like, Teddy's the exact person? Or was it like, Teddy's the closest person that I can really bring into this?
It's a really, and again, wow, you're really just hitting it with great questions. I think it was a bit of both, but truthfully, I could not think of a better co-founder because we have such complementary skills.
Yeah.
And he was working at Bain as a management consultant. he actually was doing a project with Sainsbury's at the time. So he had a really solid understanding of the grocery space in the UK. Amazing. And there was just this familiarity, of course, because we were like family and best friends. And I think that ability to communicate with one another, but also because he is a massive matcha enthusiast as well. I put him onto it. And then, so funny, but he moved to LA after college. When I was working in New York in finance, he moved to LA to work for Bain there. Yeah. And he fell into the LA trap and got his teeth whitened. And he was like, I can't drink coffee anymore because it just ruins your teeth. So gotta switch to something that doesn't stain it. So for vanity purposes, he fell in love with matcha even more. And he felt as passionately as I did about bringing it to the masses.
So you guys quit your job at the same time?
No. I quit my job and got this, got into this grad program. And it was during the grad program that we started the business.
He was still working?
He was still working full time.
Right.
Yeah. And then he eventually, about 6 months later, quit.
In starting it, do you remember those first couple of months? Because I think all founders somewhat do. But for you, it wasn't that long ago. Do you remember that time, and what did that time feel like for you?
I remember that time very well, and it was honestly so fun. It was just so fun because I was stuck in this box for what felt like a very long time of just doing the same monotonous tasks over and over. And whilst they were still very intellectually stimulating, I was doing financial models on Excel all day, making presentations, trying to, make very concise decks that portrayed the information in the way that we wanted to show it. But it became repetitive. And I think the idea of just having like a blank slate where you could just throw paint at the wall and see what sticks. And that was just so fun. And to do it with people who you love, because my husband as well, Teddy's brother, is our third co-founder. Yeah. And he didn't come on full time until this past March, but he was still really involved during the inception phase and trying, sourcing all different types of matcha from everywhere and trying to find the best one. And it was just so fun. We had such a great time.
Was there any point in that time, let's say the first 6 months, where you're kind of discovering it, Teddy's still got his job, you're kind of all in on it a little bit? Or was there a time when you didn't think it was going to work out?
There was not a time during those first 6 months, but during the first, I would say 9 months. Yes, absolutely.
And why was that?
So many people don't know this, but we actually launched the brand on Kickstarter. Are you familiar with Kickstarter?
Yes. Yeah. I filmed many a Kickstarter video back in the day.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, that was so much fun. That whole process of making the video,
it's great,
creating it. We filmed it actually in the States. And we took a very Dollar Shave Club-esque approach to it. It was really fun. And the Kickstarter went live. Within 24 hours, we pre-sold 10,000 pounds worth of units, which for us was a really strong indication that there was interest. Yeah.
So you hadn't sold anything at this point? Any product would be being sold?
Well, the product hadn't been created yet. We were kind of just we were in the process of making it behind the scenes, working with recipe creators and, creating the branding for it, but it hadn't been manufactured. And actually, the product that we pre-sold never got manufactured, ever, because it was a matcha latte in a Tetra Pak that we were actually trying to create.
For those who don't know, Tetra Pak is
the, those cartons, like what Vita Coco or boxed water is in. You kind of get that like papery taste almost after. Yeah. So I'm really glad that we never actually did it. But that is what we were trying to make. And we eventually had to scrap that idea because we ran into manufacturing issues because it was the middle of 2020 and then 2021. They were so backed up with, just delays. And they
I guess the bigger brands making huge orders.
100%. They were just, I think they're one of Oatly's largest manufacturers in the UK. Yeah. So they were just prioritizing pretty much Oatly. Yeah. And they were like, okay, we'll see you in 2023. We're like, it's 2021. What are you talking about? So we knew we had to pivot. Yeah. We were hit with a moment though where we were like, fuck, we just pre-sold 10,000 pounds worth of product and we can't sell this. So that was fun. But I think, I love using the example of bamboo to kind of represent, and it's funny because I see some bamboo in here.
You found that.
Did you? Oh my God. Psychic. Because bamboo is one of the strongest plants, but really where their strength lies is in their flexibility and their ability to kind of bend to the wind, not break to it. And I think it's a really good analogy for how entrepreneurs are constantly just under pressure to be flexible, actually, because you have to deliver, but sometimes you might not deliver exactly in the way that you had expected or had planned. And again, another, a quote that I love is Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
I was going to say, that's the quote that I was thinking, that quote I was thinking about when you said that.
So when you get punched in the face, what do you do? Do you kind of succumb to the pain and the fear, or do you try to get around it, get back up again, and find another way? And that's what we had to do. So we thought, okay, how else can we deliver matcha? And we thought, energy drinks. That makes so much sense. We looked into the market. There was nothing like it. Ultimately, it was a novel format to deliver on the same mission that we were trying to deliver in the first place.
And that mission you guys spread as, well, you guys' aim is spreading positive energy, right? Was that always, I was going to ask you, is that always the goal and the kind of thing in your heads from day one? It sounds like it was.
100%. Because for us, positive energy is matcha. Positive, healthy energy. And for us, it's matcha.
And at that point, it feels like you're moving to go into the energy drink space, which I think we obviously spoke about before, a little bit off camera about. But for you, was there suddenly then a fear of like, hold on, we're now going to a different world slightly in terms of the size of brands and the size of power of brands in the energy drink space? Was that at all a worry for you?
Honestly, at that stage, one, you're just so delusional that you think you can do anything.
Yeah.
So you don't even think about it really. And you're just so consumed with trying to make the product that you're not even worried about that yet.
Yeah.
Because for us, the whole issue was we had initially promised customers we'd have the product to them by the summer, and we couldn't get it to them. So then we thought, okay, we need another deadline. So let's launch at the London Coffee Festival in, I think it was like the beginning of October 2021. And that was a hard deadline that we set, but we had, just the summer to produce the products, find a brand new manufacturer, create a relationship with them, source all the ingredients, get it to the factory, do a production run. Like, there was no time. So we were like sprinting, and we weren't thinking about Red Bull or Monster. We were just like, how the hell are we going to produce these cans?
Yeah.
So once we got the cans, that was a different story. But, still to this day, really, we're not even that worried about it, truthfully, because we're so confident in our product offering and how differentiated it is from the existing options, that it's not really a fear. It's more exciting to feel that it's a challenge to steal market share away from them, and that the opportunity is so great. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Those early days, the branding is obviously a big part of what you guys do. And I know you were deeply involved in that personally, right? In terms of you didn't just bring in loads of resources to do it. You really got involved. Why was the branding so important to you?
We, for many reasons, but one, we understood that in the very early days when you lack budget to do large marketing campaigns, packaging is kind of your largest marketing expense. So we really wanted it to be able to communicate what the product was and what it was delivering. For us, it felt natural to lead with the messaging of matcha because that was the goal early on. But one of the best pieces of advice that we got from another founder was actually consider leading with the output of the product as opposed to the input. And for us, that is exactly why we then eventually transitioned to healthy energy. Because when a customer has 2 seconds to make a decision when they're looking at a shelf. They want to know, why should I pick that up and what is it going to do for me?
Yeah.
Is it the taste or is it the function? And for us, it's both, but primarily function, because obviously you're reaching for an energy drink when you're in a specific need state. So as well, in a country that isn't necessarily educated on matcha, to lead with matcha as a message is a bit risky, because you're then banking on them knowing what it is.
Yeah.
So it's definitely evolved over time.
So at the early stages, the kind of V1 of the product, if you will, which you launched with at the coffee show, did that lead with matcha?
Correct.
And did you straight away notice, because obviously there you were in person, right, speaking to people, which is the best thing to do, but did you notice people were having that resistance?
Absolutely. There was such an education gap. But I don't think we would have gotten to where we are today without having that initial packaging format, because it made us stand out. It was different. It was so unique. No one had ever seen an RTD sparkling matcha drink in the UK market.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that's why we cut through the noise and were able to launch nationwide in 1,200 Tesco stores less than, what was it? When was that? About 14, 15 months after we actually launched the products.
Wow.
You know? And we rolled out into Tesco with that old packaging.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So after you launched the coffee show, talk to me about the timeline after that. So that's the first time people have seen the product. The Kickstarter, you then deliver to there. I imagine then you're trying to work out how we really get some momentum here. What was the plan at that point?
We have no plan.
What did you do at that point is more the question then.
You know, it's funny. I think the universe works in such a crazy way, because we had so much inbound interest. We were so lucky very early on. I really feel that the timing and just the universe was trying to throw good luck our way. We were reached out to 2 weeks after we actually launched the cans at the London Coffee Festival in October of 2021. We were emailed by the Holland & Barrett drinks buyer, who was like, love the cans. Can I get some samples? Great. Done. Sent them. Set up a call. I think it was a month later, he was like, okay, great. We'd love to roll this out into Holland & Barrett nationwide. And we were like, huh? What? What do you mean? And he was like, yeah, like 450 stores in May. Can you do it? And we were like, yeah, sure.
Could you do it?
No, not at all. We had no money. We had no idea how we could even scale up to a production of that size, you know?
Because 450 stores, for those that don't know, how many cans would that have been roughly?
Oh my God. Quick maths. Let's see. Oof. Wow, you've really found my weak spot. That would have been, initial order fill would have been maybe like 10,000 cans.
And you didn't know where you had that ready to like just set
Probably
that, right?
not, because we needed to get it booked in.
Yeah.
But honestly, we did it. So no, it would have been more than 10,000 cans, maybe 20,000.
That's crazy for a business that's so young, and you're enjoying the process. And is at this point Teddy actually in the UK with you, and he's working on it full time as well?
Yeah, we were all living together, working on it full time.
And it's just the two of you, really?
Just the two of us full time. Levi was contributing as much as he could behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, it was just mad. And then from there, it was kind of just a snowball effect. And I think it was right after like several lockdowns, and people were just more understanding of the connection between what they were putting in their bodies and how it was making them feel mentally. And most energy drinks or sport drinks on the market were focusing on that athletic performance and endurance piece that you'd get from that kind of product. But for us, we were really focused on the mental performance and the enhanced productivity and just positioning it in a totally different way. So we thought, if that's the angle we're taking, surely we have to get into offices. So this is one of my favorite stories, what we did early on. So we got confirmation of a Holland & Barrett listing in November of 2021. Or December of 2021. And starting in Jan 2022, we started reaching out to mid to high level managers at LinkedIn, Amazon, Google, just like random people, genuinely random people. And we were like, hey, we'd love to send you, we'd love to send you some free product.
Right.
Would you be able to try it? And they were like, okay, sure. These are people that are never used to getting, you know, samples of anything or like PR boxes.
Yeah.
So they were so grateful and so excited.
Felt so special as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because we spent so long on the formulation, perfecting it, making sure it tasted really nice, they mostly all loved it. And we said, great. Now, could you please request it from your catering manager? And they were like, absolutely, because they felt like an obligation almost.
There was a connection there.
Exactly. And we built trust with them. There was a personal, you know, there was personal communication between the founders and them. So they felt really almost like they had to, in a way, or like it was their duty. And when we finally reached out to the catering managers, maybe like a month later, they were like, oh my God, I've been hearing about your brand and your products everywhere. Like everyone's been requesting them. Like, yes, let's get it in. Let's get it in. So then we got a massive PO from a purchase order from Facebook. And that was like our first really big account. Yeah, that was
these little, I mean, they're not little wins at all. They're huge wins for a brand that's so new. And like there are brands that have been around for years that still want those conversations to start. What's going through your mind at this point with all these little wins, these success points, these it's working, it's happening? Like what's actually going through your head?
Just building the momentum. Or just like, how do we continue to ride this wave? Or like the wave is just building and getting taller. Like, let's not fucking crash, you know? But like, how do we just continue to ride it, build an infrastructure that allows us to grow? You know, around this time is when we started considering bringing on employees, and it was really early, but I think because we had in a sense like burned the boats, you know, do you know this whole analogy of like burning the boats?
No, I don't think so.
When Cortez tried to conquer the Aztec Empire from Spain, I believe, he was faced with a native population that was far larger than the army that he had brought overseas. And he told his army, burn the boats because we're never going back.
Wow.
And it allowed them, it basically said, we don't have a plan B. There's no escape route. Like, this is the only way forward. So we have to make it happen. And quite literally removing another option made them solely focus on the goal. You know, they needed that clarity. So for us, we had no other options. You know, we had already burned our boats in a sense because I had quit my job. Teddy had quit his job, and we had already put in, you know, quite a bit of money to build the brand and produce the cans and spent so much time and energy on it. So
for you guys, how was your relationship in that time?
I think in those earlier days, we were still trying to understand each other's working styles.
Right.
And we definitely fought, but I think we had a lot of fun together. There was a point though when it stopped feeling quite fun.
Right.
And that is when we realized that we maybe needed to bring on more people, because the reason it stopped feeling fun was because we were so burnt out. And because we were just doing everything. And of course, when you're exhausted perpetually, sleep deprived, you know, not really eating properly because you don't have time, that you're just going to snap at each other a bit more. And that's when we were like, okay, if we really care about this business and we want to make it grow, we need to actually invest in it properly and bring on people who can help make it happen.
Do you think there was an ability to have really honest conversations with each other at that stage in terms of like the level of maturity you both had? Because success is hard, right? And I want to talk to you about that a little bit more, but you're finding a lot of success. There's just two of you. There's lots of pressure. There's money in the pot now. You don't have a plan B, all those other variables, but were you able to kind of sit down and actually say at some points, like, these are my problems, I want to hear your problems?
Yes. And oftentimes it was me coming to him, sitting him down and saying, this is how I'm feeling. How are you feeling? Often met with resistance and sometimes a little bit of passive aggression. And I said, you have to cut that bullshit. Because if you continue to be passive aggressive to me and not actually tell me what you're feeling or what's wrong, then we'll never be great leaders together. We're never going to create something that's bigger than us because we need to just be like ruthless in our, you know, transparency with one another. And after that, I think he was able to open up.
And are you seeing his brother at this point? So you're seeing Levi at this point. So that dynamic must be challenging in itself. Like you're dealing with that, and then I'm sure you're dealing with other stuff. How I don't know how you navigated that, to be honest. But like, how did you?
It was fun, honestly. I know it sounds. I think I kind of thrive in chaos a little bit. So, and I'm used to it. So I didn't necessarily mind it, but obviously there were so many times when so Levi and I've been together for almost 10 years now. And
amazing.
I moved in with, thank you. And I moved in with Teddy and Levi when I moved to London. Yeah. And then we lived together for 4 years up until a month ago. So I was even married and still living with Teddy, which was annoying as hell. But we eventually kicked him out. I think for me, genuinely, he's back at home now.
A new Kickstarter for Teddy's in your house.
If you have any open flats or know anyone looking for a roommate, let him know, please. Send him up on LinkedIn. We love that. But I think there were very many times when Levi found himself as the mediator between us because,
right.
And that was actually kind of nice because since he wasn't involved in the day-to-day, he had a very different approach. He just came at it from a different angle and was able to think bigger picture and longer term vision, whereas we were a little bit more stuck in the day-to-day minutia.
One of those kind of, I guess, conflict points, let's call them, between you and Teddy, did one of them appear when you were deciding whether or not to go on the Den?
Yes.
Because you didn't want to go on, right?
No.
Tell me why.
So the Den is an interesting story because timeline of events, we launched the concept for Perfect Ted on Kickstarter in April of 2021.
Okay.
We launched the cans in October of 2021.
It's crazy. That's only 3 years ago.
I know.
It's mad.
I know.
Sorry, carry on.
But back up to April of 2021, the day we launched our Kickstarter, Teddy quite literally falls out of his chair onto the floor. And I'm like, oh my God, what? Are you having like a heart attack? What's happening?
Well, I work. Just in the office.
Yeah, in office, aka our dining room table.
Lovely office.
Love, great office. I mean, it was so small, but it was awesome. And he falls onto the floor and I'm like, are you okay? What's up? And he's like, Marisa, we just got an email from the producers of Dragon's Den. They just saw our Kickstarter campaign. And I was like, what? Anyways, we had a call with them like a day later and they were like, we love the idea. We'd love to have you on the show. And we were like, we don't have a product. Like, what? And we had no idea, by the way, that this is how it worked, that they actually actively sought out brands.
Don't they?
Exactly. Yeah. So they don't just accept applications, they scout. So we were like, we'd love to come on at some point, but we just don't have the product. Like, it kind of feels a little bit counterintuitive. Like, we'd love to have sales. We thought logically as well, we'd get a better deal because we have no revenue. Like, we have literally 10K in pre-sales. Like, we have no money. Our valuation is going to be shit. So we don't want to give away 100% of the business. So when we launched the cans in October of 2021 and we're riding this momentum, get into Facebook, you know, get confirmed listing at Holland & Barrett, eventually launch into Holland & Barrett, we call the producer back actually and say, hey, we launched the cans, we have the physical product, we have some distribution, we'd love to be considered for this next season.
So you said no and then went back, basically.
Correct.
Great.
And they said, great, let's do some diligence. And we did weeks and weeks and weeks. And then they went quiet.
And what is that pre-diligence process, just so we can understand it? Is that really diving into a lot of the numbers and the revenue and what you're saying, or is it just a lot of calls and conversations?
Everything.
Right.
Everything. I mean, so much paperwork, you know, all of our like company registration details, that, everything, like all of our existing contracts, just everything, our sourcing, everything. And they kind of just ghosted us. And we were like, what the? And it was super weird. And we had no idea what was going on. But at the same time, and also people don't know this really, is Teddy was in the final round of going on Gordon Ramsay's Future Food Stars show.
What?
And he actually went to the first day of filming at the BBC.
Is that to be a chefing stuff, cooking up?
This was his new show format. It wasn't for cooking, it was for entrepreneurs. So people in food and beverage brands.
Yeah. And there's lots of challenges and stuff like that. I think I saw the show.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but you'd have to take like 8 weeks off the business. And when Teddy went to the first day of filming, they asked him kind of like pointed questions about almost like his dating life and things that were very unrelated to Perfect Ted.
Right.
And he was like, why was this line of questioning asked? And they said, oh, well, everyone has a role in this show. You're the flirty one. So he was like, what? Like, I don't want to.
You're the flirty one.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not going on a show to be like a joke. Like, I'm not doing this. So he dropped out. And
you're the flirty one. Is hilarious just to be like, we're all going to be the one that causes trouble.
Yeah. I mean,
it's TV, isn't it?
Yeah, but also they didn't get it totally wrong. So, he's very much single. So
if you've got a flat and single, there's an option with Teddy.
Yeah, I won't even get into that. I won't embarrass him. But we then got reached out to 2 days later after he dropped out by the producers of Dragon's Den. It was like the perfect timing. And but I didn't see it that way because they said, great, we have a slot for you in 5 days. Can you come to Manchester then? And we were like,
to film it?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had 5 days to prepare. And obviously we didn't think it was happening. So we didn't prepare anything. We didn't prepare the pitch. We really had very little knowledge of our financials at that point at all, which is kind of embarrassing. But, we were just moving so quickly and doing everything that it was hard to really have a grasp of it.
Is it still 2 of you at this point?
2 of us. Again, Levi is kind of like part-time.
Yeah.
And we do have a part-time intern who's doing some marketing support for us.
But basically just the 2 of you to do the whole thing.
And I essentially like broke down like 10 times, pulled out 3 times, was like, I can't do this. I was just so anxious. And
it was.
Yeah. And also with my ADHD, I just like having this feeling of preparedness that makes me confident and comfortable going into situations.
Sure.
Even before this, I'm reading my notes. Like I'm like, what are some of my talking points? What stories can I bring up? And I just felt very little time to prepare. And that scared the shit out of me. And we actually knew a brand that had gone on a previous season and they were slated because they hated their product. It wasn't even about the way he pitched it.
Right.
He knew his numbers like the back of his hand. They just hated his product. And for 5 esteemed dragons to go on public television and say, oh, this product tastes like shit, that's not great for sales, is it?
Because also, I guess once you filmed it, you can't control anything.
No.
So as soon as you walk in that room and whatever happens, you have no say in how it's edited, if it's even put out, any of that stuff, no matter what happens, right?
No. And I just struggle to relinquish control in those situations. When you care so much about something and it feels somewhat like the entire future of your business is determined by someone else.
Yeah.
And they can paint whatever narrative they'd like.
Sure.
That is terrifying, So I think I just saw a lot of the risk in going on. And Teddy was like, are you mad? This is the craziest opportunity. And Teddy, one of his best friends, or his best friend in the world, actually, unfortunately, passed away from cancer. And they grew up watching Dragon's Den every week together. And it was a dream of his to go on. And I think once I understood, the magnitude of the opportunity and that I needed to put the business before my own personal concerns, and 2, saw how much it meant to Teddy.
Yeah.
I couldn't let him down. It was more about Teddy. It was more about letting Teddy down than anything. Yeah.
I mean, what an amazing co-founder though, eh? Like the fact that you're willing to kind of go through that for the benefit of Teddy. I know it benefits both of you, but it's nice to know that through everything you can support each other in some capacity. So how did you find the show?
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, the process to getting there wasn't. Those 5 days were miserable.
Yeah.
But it went super well. It honestly went better than we could have ever anticipated.
Because you ended up with quite a few offers.
We got offers from all of them.
And what did that piece feel like?
Surreal. Teddy and I were like just laughing because, they say, go talk to the wall. And you're like, oh, actually, and you actually talk to the wall. It's so weird. And Teddy and I are like,
it's the kind of UK thing we would do. Shout out to some bricks.
we're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, we literally had no, we were like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was just such a surreal moment. But you're in there for an hour and a half. You only see like 15 minutes, but it was wild. It was like so much questioning. And Teddy had glandular fever at the time. Gosh. I was up at 3:30 in the morning to start hair and makeup. It's just a long day.
Yeah.
So,
but you're waiting around for a slot and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like pre-planned and,
nope.
You know, you're not necessarily talent, if you will, like they're kind of working around. It's kind of like get in there and do your thing.
They do give you a dressing room, which is nice.
That's nice.
And they did put some makeup on Teddy, which I don't think people know either. So some new information there.
So with all the offers you had, what did you walk out of the den with offers-wise?
We walked out with offers from Peter and Steven. But when we went into the diligence process after, it took quite a while. And by the time that we were actually willing to, eventually sign the deal, all parties were. We had already received confirmation from Tesco that we were going to be launching nationwide with them. And one of the reasons why we wanted to partner with someone like Peter was because he could unlock so much distribution, open doors that we would never have access to. And with Tesco, we felt like we had the largest retailer in the country on our side. And really, who else? And we were already in conversations with most other major retailers.
Right.
And felt that a lot of the value that we had attributed to Peter, we had actually achieved on our own.
So is this before you've gone in the den or just after you've come out, but the episode is not live and you're just working? You're just doing your vibe, right?
So there's like a 9-month waiting period.
And so much happened in that time that by the time you come to sign, you've actually already done the action points.
Correct. Yeah.
So what actually happened with that? So Peter was no longer involved?
No, we had to have a very awkward call with his head of investments.
You guys said no.
So it was a call to so we actually had asked Steven's team to have a private call before we were going to have this group call.
Sure.
Because it was to discuss the future of the investment and just signing all the documents. So we had a call with Jason Bartlett, who is Steven's brother, who runs all of his investments. Mm-hmm. And we said very openly and honestly, we are so excited to work with you and Steven and your whole team. But candidly, we would like to renege on the deal with Peter because of XYZ reason. We feel that we don't want to dilute so much right now. The business is growing at a really fast rate. And a lot of the value that we had initially thought he'd bring, we've actually done. He totally understood. So then we got on a call with his Peter's head of investments and Jason. And we said, we kind of had to say, Jason, we want to move forward with Steven, but we're going to have to not move forward with Peter. Like, I don't even remember. Honestly, I think I blacked out during that call.
Were you having the conversation? So a few questions I have is, was it a team decision? Did you all agree to do this? Which is obviously important. But who led that conversation?
I think it was Levi. Yeah. Levi had the fun job of doing that. And you know why? Because I think since Teddy and I were on the show and we met them, we felt like it was best to have someone who...
The positioning's right.
Exactly. It seemed a bit more neutral. And that actually is a benefit of having three, because we can all play different roles in whatever situation we need. So I think it was Levi who ran that. He did very well.
Yeah. What was the response like?
Not happy. I think it was a bit like, you don't want to do a deal with Peter Jones. Yeah. Really? And they were kind of like, I mean, I guess I get it. They were a bit shocked, but yeah, it wasn't great.
I guess your reasoning is valid though, because of the reason why you get any investor. Any investor doesn't only just bring cash, no matter if they're a dragon or if they're a nobody, if you will, someone that no one knows. There's benefits to bringing in investors, and you guys identified the reason why.
Absolutely.
But it's difficult to do. So life after the den, obviously, that season feels like a really big season when you guys were involved in it. There was loads of other brands that kind of came through that, and obviously you guys I remember seeing you got a cinema right to watch it and everything like that, which looked awesome. But what's the actual impact of a show like Dragon's Den for you?
Mad. I mean, so many things. Firstly, it gave us a D2C business overnight, which was pretty crazy.
Literally overnight.
Yeah. I mean, we had spoken to as many brands as we could who had previously gone on the den to try to get an accurate sense of stock forecasting and just really how prepared we needed to be. And we got a good hold on it well in advance, but we really didn't anticipate the number.
When do you get told when the episode's coming out? Do you have a 3-month period of being like, cool, we've got 3 months to get ready for an impact?
You are not told the actual date until about 2 to 3 weeks prior, but you're given a sense of timing.
Like Q1, Q2?
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly.
So how prepared were you?
Not prepared enough. I mean, it was just mad. We had a delivery of whisks stuck on a boat from China. It was just it was such an issue. It was just, yeah. I mean, it was a mad period of time. I think Teddy, because he oversees ops, he was drowning, and we were just all trying to do our part to support. But yeah, we got an online business overnight. Luckily for us, we have super high retention because I think people are very happy with the product, and organically have just been able to maintain and even grow our online business from there without much ad spend at all. So that's been cool. And obviously you get like 4 to 5 million eyeballs on your product. If you actually look at Google search terms for matcha, or if you look at the volume over time, it peaked on March 2nd, 2023.
Really?
It's the coolest thing ever to see. But it continues to rise since then.
Yeah.
So, that was pretty amazing. Actually, Holland and Barrett, because they were mentioned in the episode, because at that point they were our only nationwide stockist.
When you were filming?
We were filming, they saw the highest ever traffic on their website ever.
Really?
Yeah. Like the head of data science or something for Holland and Barrett commented on my LinkedIn post being like, we had the most traffic on our website ever tonight.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
What is that period of time of the episode going out and the orders coming in and watching it in the cinema with people? Like, what are you actually thinking at that point? Like, sat in the cinema, what are you actually thinking?
That was the most overwhelmed I had ever felt in my life. Because I knew that our lives were going to change. Because yes, we had already launched in Tesco. We launched in Tesco the same week, by the way, that our Dragon's Den episode went live, and that was on purpose. But it was also so freaking overwhelming. I was like, why did we do this to ourselves? But
Tesco's won that from you?
Yes.
Right.
They wanted
to make sense.
It makes sense. It was great because we had a place to tell people to go. We wanted, and obviously Holland and Barrett, but we wanted to, have it even more, widely available.
Yeah.
So, but I was just overwhelmed. I mean, I felt so many different things. Like, firstly, you feel pure elation. I feel like it's probably the biggest hit of dopamine I've ever felt, other than my wedding, genuinely, because you're just, it's the first time you're ever watching the episode. So you don't even know what they're going to show before. I couldn't have been happier with the edit. It made us look good. It made the brand look great. It explained what the product was. It really did everything that we had wanted it to and more.
Great.
And everyone was there in a cinema for us and so supportive and excited. And it exceeded my expectations. But then the reality kind of sets in and you're like, oh shit, we got to deliver. Like, we're a real brand now. Like, people are going to know us, and we have to keep the momentum going.
Are you overwhelmed in a positive way or a more, anxiety driven way at that point though?
Both, maybe.
Yeah.
I think more positive than anything. And maybe feeling a little bit of, I don't know, vindication of some sort, because I feel like, and again, this comes back to my self-awareness piece, but part of me has always felt like I've wanted to prove my dad wrong in a weird way.
Right.
And that goes back to, he did some pretty nasty, terrible things that no parent would ever do to their child. Like try to get me expelled from college. That's a whole other story. But he just would always say very, negative things. And I just always knew that I was destined for something far greater than he ever was. And I kind of was like, it felt kind of like a massive fuck you in a way, which was so fun. I know that sounds a bit,
I honestly think the pettiness that someone might say that is, I think is the biggest driver, because I've had that before. Like when you like just being able to say fuck you to something or someone, I think is like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So I get it 100%. Because that stuff just, it does matter. Like you shouldn't care and you shouldn't listen. It's the past and all that kind of stuff. But it does, it's nice. It's like what a lot of the drive comes from.
And I also think, you know, going on national television and admitting that I have ADHD and anxiety, it wasn't something I initially felt comfortable with for some reason.
Right.
And seeing that episode and then understanding afterwards the magnitude that of the impact that had on young women, just after it aired, so many mothers would just approach me and say, my daughter was just diagnosed with ADHD and she was hysterical because she felt like she was never going to accomplish anything in her life as a result. And I showed her your video where you're admitting that you have ADHD on national television. And it has given her so much hope and confidence for her future. And for me, I was just like, this was such an unintended impact of me talking about my story, but it made me so passionate then about advocacy for ADHD and just that you can go on to accomplish amazing things as well. That for me kind of is the best feeling of all that I get from all of this. Like when we get feedback from people that say, I read your story on the side of the can, and I also have ADHD, and I found this to like really help me. So thank you. And just the thanks that we get, that fills my cup, you know?
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what is your biggest driver now, and post that, all the success that you've had today? And is that it?
1000%, 100%. Because my whole life, I have been surrounded by just various mental health challenges with different family members, with myself. And to hear that my story and our products are helping people with their mental health, just that for me is everything. That is like one of the things I'm most passionate about. I somewhat thought as a teenager that I'd go on to become a therapist for some reason. And I feel like I, in a way, have somewhat accomplished that goal because I speak to so many people at events and they just kind of pour their hearts out to me. And I just love being able to connect with them and show them that it's okay and they're going to be all right. Their kids are going to be all right. It all works out. Give them the proper support, you know, and make them just feel seen and heard, and it'll all be okay. That for me is everything now. Amazing.
That's mega. The success that the brand went through at that period of time, how big was the size of the business pre going on the show?
Oh my God. Okay. So to paint a picture, I think the month before we went on the Den, which was May 2022, I think we did like 9,000 pounds in sales. And
which, completely for the record, by the way, for the size of where you are as a brand and like the journey is not bad. Like, I know that this is the thing which we're going to talk about, like particularly for podcasts, like the big numbers are always great for getting clicks, but like I do just want to say I do think that's even a $9,000 for the size of the brand. Like I've worked with brands that have been working for 3-4 years and they've never got to that point as a D2C model. So like, again, celebrate the little wins, right? But
that did feel big for us, by the way, at the time.
Like, this is one thing I do think is missed with a lot of brands and founders and, you know, people trying to create stuff where they just take away because they're comparing themselves to other things. $9,000 in online sales for a business that's like 18 months old by my maths, if not less.
No.
6 months old.
Yeah.
Is ridiculous. But anyway, the actual impact is a lot bigger.
Yeah. So that was pretty crazy. And then I think the month of the Den, we did like 400,000 pounds. So that was
online, just on the site.
No, total sales. Yeah.
Jesus.
So we went from 9K to 400K in less than a year. And now we're at like, I don't know, maybe like 1.4 million pounds a month. Which is crazy.
That is.
So,
did you ever think it would get this big this quickly?
No. I feel like again, because I'm so goal oriented, I knew at some point we would get here, but I didn't think we'd get here this fast.
Do you remember your initial productions?
Yeah.
Where were you meant to be by this point?
Oh my
Do you have
God.
any idea?
Yeah. I think we got...
The initial production
wrote,
for the coffee table, the kitchen table, basically.
We wrote a business plan really early on, and I think we thought we were going to hit like £1 million by year 3.
A month?
No, total.
Total, a year?
Yeah.
And you now do 1.4 a month?
Yeah.
What has been actually the biggest driver? Because one thing I would say is an outsider looking at the Perfect Head brand is that it's so clear the impact that the den had had. It's so clear that obviously people like Steven being a part of your brand has had. But for you, what do you actually think has been the biggest driver of growth to get to this point so quickly?
I think a few things. One, it's definitely the den and Steven have absolutely helped.
Of course.
For awareness and educating people about matcha, because we were able to explain what it was and really access a demographic that we actually never intended on selling to. So the average Dragon's Den viewer isn't who we actually typically thought it was. It's older.
Is it an older demographic?
Much older.
Because everyone thinks it's young entrepreneurs trying to build brands, but it's probably not.
No. It's a much older, more suburban, rural demographic than anything. So that was great, because that exposed us to an audience that we would have never really reached for, I would say, for quite a while. And then I really think a lot of it has to do with changing consumer habits and just, again, this awareness of the correlation between what you're consuming and how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Maybe consumer trends in people trying to reduce their coffee intake, and just honestly the accessibility of it. I think we have had so many goals in mind with this business. And, when we entered the matcha market, as you kind of alluded to before, matcha did have a wave in 2017, 2018, when these new brands came up. They were selling for 40 quid for a 30 gram tin. For reference, we sell a 30 gram pouch for 10 quid. Okay. And it was just the market was not priced properly. And it wasn't
feeling very like bougie and very like exclusive. And like I remember the metal tins, which I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
With the little wooden scoops, and you would get like this much for like a crazy amount.
It didn't feel attainable. It wasn't for the average person.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud to say that like, it's genuinely, now it feels ubiquitous. Like we just launched with M&S cafes. We have some, thank you. I mean, we're with Black Sheep Coffee, Joe and the Juice. We have so many food service partners now. I think that has played a lot into it by making it widely available within the context that people would already be getting their caffeine fix.
Yeah.
And showing them that it can be used as an alternative to what they're currently drinking. Then, I remember initial conversations we'd have with cafes, and they're like, why is this better than chai? Like, chai doesn't sell that well. And we're like, we promise you that it will sell way better than chai. Okay. Because the benefits, just the taste profile, the ability to make it fun, creating flavored matcha lattes has been massive for us, because it's an entry point. We kind of see it as an ecosystem, right? Because we have our powder side and we have our cans. They all feed into one another, because people who drink the cans eventually are like, ooh, maybe I'll try the powder. So they might try a matcha latte out at one of their local cafes that we supply. And then they're like, ooh, I love a strawberry matcha latte. Maybe I'll try just a regular. And then they're driving our food service wholesale business. Then they're like, oh, I kind of want to make it at home. So I'll buy the pouch at Tesco. And obviously I'm going to snag, a can while I'm out in the meal deal as well, because I just love how it makes me feel. So it's just this whole matcha ecosystem that we've been able to create, where we make the price really accessible and we make the format accessible as well, because we're able to give it to them in so many options. And we've just released Nespresso pods, which are by far the easiest way to make matcha. So for anyone who thinks that, it's a bit of a faff to like use powder, then you don't have an excuse now.
So accessibility feels like a big driver then, particularly to get the momentum up. Because if you just had the cans, you probably wouldn't be where you are.
No.
So it's around being everywhere, those touch points.
And because we're able to use the same powder that we then sell wholesale and, in retail within our cans, we've increased our volume to the point where we've benefited so much from economies of scale that we're able to get such a great price that no one really can compete with us. So,
That's amazing. During that growth, you're obviously growing team, right? And for you as a founder, how did you find growing the team?
Equal parts fun and terrifying. Because fun, because you can really craft the culture that you want at your business and create an environment where you are so excited to come into work every day. That for me is the most important thing. Working with A players who are entrepreneurial themselves, who are motivated, who are hardworking. Our team is young and hungry, and half of them haven't even, had a higher ed degree. We don't care about that. We just care about their attitude, their ability to problem solve, and just to get down and dirty.
Sure.
But then it's terrifying. Down and dirty. But then it's terrifying because if you can make one wrong hire, and we actually did learn our lesson in bringing on an intern that was really not a good fit for the team. And it was actually kind of like, it's almost like a rotten apple. It will spread and then eventually infect the rest of the apples. So we made a very swift decision to kindly ask her to leave the company, and it wasn't met with the resistance. It was fine. It was mutual, and that was a big learning for us. And then we just made sure that our criteria moving forward for finding new employees was much stricter.
Yeah. What's the hardest challenge for you as a founder?
Managing my emotions, especially as someone who, I also have struggled with depression, and I have anxiety and ADHD. And I just, often for me, I'm just way more susceptible to feeling very, very low and very high. And it's just managing those highs and lows. I think it's really all personal. It's managing my emotions. It's managing my time. It's managing my energy. I feel like most founders will say it's really impossible to achieve a balance. I don't even know if that exists. And I love this idea that you can do it all, just not at the same time. And I agree with that, because right now this chapter of my life is dedicated to Perfect Head and to making matcha mainstream. But of course that will come with really incredible wins that we must celebrate and make me so happy. And of course that will lead to such incredible conversations and meeting people like you, opening up opportunities to have a platform to speak. I mean, that's incredible, but it will also open up the doors to very dark periods where you just feel deflated, like you can't do anything right, like you're not being a great manager, like, you failed at something, or maybe an activation didn't go the way that you had planned, and that's your fault, and I think I'm rather hard on myself, and I know that. And one piece of feedback, actually notes, we don't call it feedback, it's notes. A note that Levi gives me a lot, my husband and co-founder, he'll say, you're just so hard on yourself. Like, take some stock of what you're doing and take pride in it. But I just feel this need to constantly improve and be great. Maybe it's more of an American mentality of this self-improvement, always be better and get better and feel better and do better. But the reality of it is that, you're just going to have down periods. And I think managing those has been the hardest.
How do you manage the process of being hard on yourself? You personally?
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring it out. I'm working on it in therapy. I'm very open with my team about it, actually. We are trying to create a culture at Perfect Head where people can talk about how they feel. And being totally open and honest. Obviously, you need boundaries, but I think that if someone is struggling, we would never want anyone to feel alone, ever. And if they're struggling as a result of their work, I mean, all the more reason for us to know about it and help do something. and take action, be proactive. But I'm still sorting it out. I think, talking about it, trying to, sounds a bit corny, but like reading positive affirmations and trying to like rewire some of the negative self-talk that I typically find myself into having, that I'm trying to do. Sound waves. Like,
what's that?
They're just different, like, I don't even know what it is. I think it's like frequencies that apparently help with mood boosting, and you listen to it like under music, and maybe it's a placebo, but I think it helps. So whenever, I'll just run with it.
Do you do any brown noise?
I love brown noise.
Yeah. My team only worked out like last year that if I have like a pod in my ear, walking around the office, someone was like, what do you always listen to? And I'm like, it's literally just this weird, like, it's on YouTube. It's like 10 hours of white noise or brown noise.
I love that.
And I just like go around, and I sometimes it actually doesn't work at all. Just for like the chemistry of my brain, if you will. But sometimes like I can just sit for like 4 hours and just listen to this. For those that don't know what it is, it sounds like a disconnected old TV. It's basically what it sounds like, where it's just like the whole time. But there's something very weird about it that's very calming in a very weird way. I think what you're describing is really common in founders, and I think I've spoken about this a lot on the podcast and with other founders that I know, is that I think where we are in terms of how we look after employees is massively changed since COVID. And it sounds like the steps you're taking of how you want your team to feel, how you want the environment you want from them, this word culture that is so popular to talk about is really taking a huge step from where we were when I first started my business 10 years ago, where, society didn't really care about employees. It was work super hard, as you did in your previous role. You're rewarded by cash, and that's it. What I'm fearful of, I'm interested to hear your opinion, is who's looking after the founders at the moment, and are they looking after themselves? Because you speak to founders and they don't want to say things to the team. They need to keep it separate. It's got to be that professional atmosphere. There's got to be leadership, etc. But I do worry about some founders, because success is hard, right? I don't know if you agree with that, but I think it is. And how do we look after founders? Because it seems like they kind of look after each other sometimes, but it feels like for you, you've got the boys around you, which is amazing. But do you agree with that? Do you think founders need a little bit more opportunity to be looked after, but also be expressive?
Absolutely. I think that there is this desire from founders to seem strong and firm, and like they can withstand anything, because especially if you have investors, you don't want people to feel concerned about putting their money with someone that is essentially, maybe going through a rough spell, right? You don't want to give them any cause for concern. So I get that. But I do think that there is power in just being honest and truthful, because if you feel like you're not being the best version of yourself, and you feel that, and you have the self-awareness to identify that, surely other people can pick up on that. And maybe by sharing it with, someone who you trust on the team, maybe someone who is more senior, or for me, I definitely feel that way about our head of sales, Shawnee. And not only is she a friend, and previously was before starting the business,
amazing,
but she's an ally for me at work, where I do feel I can open up. And obviously, again, there are boundaries, but I do feel it's important, because she's also able to give a perspective that I may not have from the team and communicate that as well, almost as an intermediary. So I do think it's important. I also think that's why founder networks are so important. I have one of my best friends in London is another founder, and I met her through the industry, and she was a bridesmaid at my wedding. I really couldn't live without her, and she is such a support for me, and because she understands the trials and tribulations that we face, because she faces it as well.
Do you think anyone could be a founder?
Yes. I think anyone can be a founder. I think even if you have certain limitations about you, if you surround yourself with the right people, the right team, the right mentors, and just have this like sheer will to persevere, then yes, then you can be. I think if you, you do need a higher risk tolerance. And I think you also have to have a higher pain tolerance.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not as, as suitable for some people, but
if you don't want that, don't try it, because it's kind of one of the things you have to give.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
But maybe like I'm just weirdly sadistic. Like I think sometimes founders can be a little bit like they thrive in the pain and the chaos. And
a lot of them are like willing to kind of go through hell and back easily, right?
Yeah.
But then I guess sometimes that's what you need to do in a very difficult way. Truthfully,
I do think my childhood does play a part in it, because I feel that since I was around, a lot of just challenging situations early on in life, it kind of prepared me for challenging situations later on in life as well. So, but that's not to say that I'm perfect and I know how to handle myself. Of course, I still have periods where I'm like, what the fuck do I do? This is crazy. But yeah.
So what does the future look like for you and Perfect Ted?
The future is bright. We've been working with a production company actually to film a docuseries.
Really?
Yep. So maybe you'll see us on Netflix, I hope. That is the goal, but we'll see. We're currently trying to speak to commissioners about it. But hopefully you'll see me posting a bit more on LinkedIn after what has felt like quite a long hiatus, but necessary for me. And you're going to see a ton more products, bigger team, just new innovation, new flavors, new distribution, new countries. The world feels kind of like our oyster right now.
What do you personally want out of Perfect Ted?
In all honesty, I feel like I've already kind of gotten what I want out of Perfect Ted. I know that sounds a bit strange.
Not really.
It's just that I think just having Steven always talks about building up stacks of evidence that you can do something. Right. That is how confidence is built, right? And this job has required me to step outside of my comfort zone every single day. And I have had so much self-doubt in my life, and I just feel that it has proved I have built up my stack of evidence that I can do hard things, and that for me means the world. Of course, I have so many goals, and of course, there are so many reasons and so many definitions of success that I hold. Yeah. Whether that's inspiring people who are neurodivergent that they can do hard things too. Whether that's some level of monetary success, of course. I think everyone would be lying if they said that wasn't some partial, motivation. Of course, it's kind of giving the finger to my dad, which I already feel like I've done. So that's great. But I really feel like I've just put myself continually in these positions where I'm so uncomfortable, but I've managed to come out on the other side somewhat unscathed, maybe just a few bruises and cuts. And that for me feels like a really big win. So
would you say it's all worth it?
Yeah, definitely.
So what does it take to build a brand like Perfect Ted, really?
Takes a lot of things. The first thing that comes to mind is money. Let's be real. For being totally practical here, you got to produce a product, you got to build a brand, you got to pay people. So there's that. But I think it really does take, again, this might sound corny, but I think it just takes passion, because if you aren't passionate about the product or the service that you're selling, you'll lose interest. And you won't be able to corral a group of people around you that are equally as motivated to making it happen and having what it takes to do it. So I just think money, passion, just this relentless drive to move forward and have such a clear vision, but the ability to be agile while being rigid in achieving your goals, if that makes sense.
It does totally. Marisa, thank you. It's been amazing to hear your story, and I know there's a lot more we could talk about for a long period of time, but thank you, and congrats to you and the team, because I know that none of this happens without an amazing team, and the chaps as well must be such a big part of it. But congrats on what you've done so far, because I do feel like this is a slight tip of the iceberg for you and the brand. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm definitely sure we'll see something from you soon, preferably on LinkedIn, I would imagine. But thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for shouting out the team, because they are the best, and truly, we wouldn't be here without them.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.